You are listening to the Spurs-Related podcast.
Hello guys, welcome to the Spurs-Related podcast, and this is our very first podcast on YouTube today. Obviously, we've done 5 or 6 Spotify ones and also Apple Music, and they've been going really, really well actually. I know a lot of you have been enjoying it, and it's been brilliant to bring this onto a new platform today, onto YouTube. And as always, I am joined by Joseph McBride, who is to my left or right. I'm not too sure how it works on these recordings. But yeah, welcome on in, Joe. A pleasure to have you as always.
Thank you, mate. Got the hat to cover up the lockdown bar on it. We're all good.
I mean, I think mine's terrible. Mine is absolutely terrible as well. We're all looking forward to the hairdressers or barbers or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, the more important factor is we have a very special guest today, BenSpurs21. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard of Ben already. Is joining us today, and I'm really grateful you joined us today, Ben. It's going to be brilliant to have you on the pod today.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for inviting me on.
No worries. Very much a pleasure. And it's going to be very interesting to hear some of your opinions on the recent affairs with Tottenham, the highs and lows, as we all know, is happening very recently. So what better way to start? I say better way. It's probably the worst way to start. And we're obviously going to talk about that Zagreb game in the Europa League. I mean, what happened, Ben?
It's been a week and I still really can't even. It just, the words don't do how mind-bogglingly bad we were. That for 120 minutes against the lowest team left in the Europa League, to be seemingly zero urgency to try and finish that tie off with, you're just screaming for anyone to just take the game, and it was just so I would say predictable, but at the same time, it shouldn't have been because of who we were up against. But it just like every single goal, it was just like sucking the air out of every Spurs fan watching it. And we've had some bad defeats over this, particularly this season, but that was, that takes the biscuit.
That was 100% one of the worst displays I've seen as a Tottenham fan in recent years. And obviously we've been used to some shock defeats in European competitions before, but the fact this was Europa League, the fact we got a very favourable tie against one of the weaker oppositions, like you were saying, I was beyond upset. Like, I think that's a very weak term to use, but Joe, as obviously you come from a different point of view, not so much a Spurs fan point of view. What were your opinions on it, and could you believe the result?
No, I couldn't believe the result. I said on the podcast last week, I thought it'd be a tough game. I thought they'd score. I did think Tottenham would win, but it's no easy task. You know, even without fans, I thought it was in your favour. Like, going to Zagreb with fans is so intimidating, and especially the fact they got their manager sacked. Well, he left because he's in prison, but there were so many factors that kind of brought into this. You know, Zagreb are going to be on the ropes, and they're not going to have the minerals to take it to Tottenham, even though it was a tie that they got nothing to lose. It was just so frustrating to watch. Even as a neutral, I was just pulling my hair out watching it. It was just so arrogant. The approach was completely wrong for the game. You know, I thought they'd score, and I'm sure Mourinho would have expected, it was very possible they were going to score. And I mean, Orsic had one of the games of his life. But you needed 1 goal, and then they needed 4. 1 goal, and that was it. And it just seemed like you were there, you were complacent, you were just, it was an easy tie. And instead of, taking that with both hands, it was, we'll be okay here, we'll get through to the next round. And that arrogance has just completely cost you. You only started playing when you had to, and it was too late. I don't know how the keeper kept out. I think Kane's effort right at the end, and Lo Celso got close. It was when Lo Celso and Bale came on, you actually looked like doing anything. It was just such a frustrating watch, and the fact Spurs are out, it's all of their own doing. It's not as if they've been beaten by the better team. They were on the day, obviously, but yeah, it was just so arrogant. It was so needless, and you should be in the next round. It's a massive shame.
It is definitely a massive shame, and like you said, the fact we should be in the next round, and Villarreal were awaiting us, who they've had a very good season, but in terms of quality, we would 100% have given them a really good game and probably progressed. And the thing for me is, the shame is, and I'm going to go to Ben on this one. it's just, we've seen it so often with Tottenham where we feel like we should get to a semi-final, a final, or even win something. Like there's a clear route ahead. A lot of the big teams have been knocked out. Like in the Europa League, obviously we've only got, Man United and one or two other big teams left in it. And it's just, it hurts a lot, the fact that it would have been an easier piece of silverware, and obviously a route to the Champions League, which obviously is back on again now, 3 points ahead away from Chelsea. But Ben, like I was just saying and Joe was saying, what are your thoughts on, the other form of qualifying for the Champions League? And do you think that, like we were saying, Tottenham always falling that final hurdle, we've almost got used to it?
Just for everything you've said, the luck of the draw that we got, and given that who we would have ended up with, it's just so annoying because the golden gate was open for us to get that, and winning a trophy, especially a European trophy, would have been massive for this, for us this season, and to always feel like you've thrown that opportunity away was just it just made us so angry Thursday night, and rightfully so in that regard, because I honestly think you look at, other than United, you look at all the other 7 teams left, bar United and maybe at a push stretch, maybe Ajax as well. You'd be pretty confident that we could easily ever go at beating all of them, and to simply just hand that off, it feels like a massive wasted opportunity.
100%, and I feel at the end, a bit like me, you're lost for words because of how bad it was. Like, I literally was. I'm still gutted now, but I'm more over it than I was. But the last few days, I was just thinking every single day. I think Joe will agree with me. Every single day, I was thinking, how did we actually throw that away? Like, I mean, we were 2-0 up. Like Joe said, we needed 1 goal and they would have needed 4. And they might have scored 4, but let's be honest, they probably wouldn't have in 90 minutes. And the fact that we just needed that 1 goal with the likes of Harry Kane, who's been firing on all cylinders, obviously, it's very disappointing. And one we need to forget, and we will forget, because we're going to move on to the next subject now. I think we've covered the Zagreb disaster now. But obviously, on a brighter note, Ben, Aston Villa at the weekend, a great 2-0 win and a clean sheet, and obviously a lot of rotation. Joe Rodon and Japhet Tanganga coming into the team, and Lucas was a man of the match, a fantastic performance. What were your thoughts on the weekend?
Well, it couldn't have been any worse, put it like that. No, very decent victory, very solid all round. I think it was very notable who was put in the team and who was left out. Rodon, I thought, did very good. Tanganga was excellent as well. Lucas was the best player on that pitch by a million miles. He was absolutely everywhere.
100%.
I do feel he gets overlooked by a lot of Spurs fans for what he puts into the team, and I hope he's found his role. And a very good win that maybe means our season isn't quite dead and buried yet.
That is true. And like I was saying earlier, 3 points away from Chelsea, Ben. Do you think that's doable?
Of course, it's doable. Definitely. I mean, all it takes is 1 game, but with 9 games to go, and you look at who the running that we've got, which I think is, I know we've got Newcastle's the first game back. I know we've got United, Southampton, a few other teams, and I know we're going away to Leicester last game of the season. So, for me, I think the turning point is what happens if Tuchel hits, because he hasn't lost yet. If he gets that first defeat, how is he going to respond from it?
Very good point.
That could be the turning point. If that might swing it in our ways, and maybe we might just scrape into top 4 all along.
Like you said, like they haven't lost yet under Tuchel, and the fact that they're really, you know, keeping a lot of clean sheets and they're looking quite solid. Like you said, if they get that one loss, how's the mentality going to go in the dressing room then? I completely agree with that, and I think that's a very interesting point. Joe, obviously, like we were saying, 3 points away from top four, and you've said it for a number of weeks. I know you have. The fact that Tottenham are still in the race for the top four. Obviously, it puts a massive focus on that top four now. We're out of the Europa League and obviously the Carabao Cup final next month, which is very, very, very soon. So what are your thoughts, Joe, on the top four chances?
Well, realistic. Not May. April is the pinnacle of your season. You know, you've got, as Ben was saying, Newcastle away, first of all, which is never an easy task. But I mean, I watched the game they played against Brighton, and it was awful. Like one of the worst Premier League performances of the season by a country mile. And yeah, they've been hampered with injuries with Callum Wilson and St. Maximan, but with how the season has been so quickly after the other one, all teams are experiencing injuries, so there's no excuse anymore. United will be a big one. I think you can get it. Obviously, that's your main focus now. Chelsea have, got what they'd say is the easiest draw in the Champions League, but they're still playing in midweek now with the Champions League. They've got that focus. Whereas other than the Carabao Cup final, Spurs have just got, their weekly Premier League games now. So they've got a lot more time to rest. They've got a lot more time to prepare. So that could fall in their favour. I don't know if it's going to be tough to get in there. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, City by far gone and they've won the league. Leicester, Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool are still lurking. West Ham are looking annoyingly dangerous. I know they surrendered to Arsenal, so it's nice for them to lose a 3-goal lead, but moving on. So yeah, I think the chances are realistic. You've just got to go and get it, and Mourinho is a good manager for that, and without the focuses elsewhere, he's got no excuse really to hide now. So I think you've just got to go and beat Newcastle first game back and then assess from there.
100% agree with all that, and I'm sure Ben would too. And I think the main point from what you said there is the fact that, Chelsea have got to play the midweek games and potentially abroad in faraway countries. So the fact that Tottenham have that rest period now, because obviously for a number of weeks it's been Thursday, Sunday, sometimes Monday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. And, the fact that the players hardly get more than 48 hours rest, it is obviously a big, big strain on them with the tight schedule this year. Ben, do you think Joe has a very valid point there in the fact that we're going to have more rest than Chelsea?
Yeah, it definitely will help us. And I think also it might benefit us in another way regarding team selection as well, because, with no other distractions, you can just focus on your Premier League from week to week. So therefore, there's no barring injury, there's no real need to change the team. And it goes back to what I said. It was very noticeable Sunday who was notably left off, the lineup, and, who was brought in. And I think barring injuries, you should just keep a team in mind and stick with it for the rest of the season, because there's no need to make changes now. We've gotten it's essentially a 9-game season to the end that we've got to win as many as we can. So, it's just got to be 100% focus on that.
100% agree. And like you said, it's got to be that mentality. 9 games fresh. Let's not think about the shock exit to Dinamo Zagreb. Let's focus on that Premier League. And I think, like you said, I think that mentality will have definitely picked up from that Villa game. That was a big, big boost, because I was very worried if we lost that game. I don't know what to say about that. But sticking on a more positive note, Ben, I'm going to stick with you now. Carlos Vinicius obviously getting his first Premier League goal against Aston Villa, and a lot of Spurs fans have been giving him credit for his positioning and eye for goal. And I think I saw a stat: 13 shots he's had on target for Tottenham in total, 9 goals. So he's quite clinical. He's always in the right place at the right time. Do we sign him?
I probably would say yes, we should. I think when he's been given the chances, particularly in the cup competitions this season, he's proved that he's got the knack of a natural striker. I think the only question mark, and it is a bit wild, but I've heard a lot of people within Spurs who obviously are huge fans of Dane Scarlett, who, the little glimpses we've seen, it looks massively promising. So I suppose the only thing is, do you trust somebody in youth like Scarlett, or maybe do you look to just keep him and develop him for another year, and then make sure you've got Vinicius there as a, I guess it's the safety net, if you will, if Kane gets injured, because that, of course, that was the entire reason we got Vinicius in the summer in the first place, was in the situation Kane gets injured, which, I mean, luckily he's been fine most of the season.
Touch wood, yes.
But in that regard, if the options, well, we know the options there for Vinicius, so yeah, I would sign him permanently in the summer.
Yeah, and just briefly touching on what you just said there about the fact that, he was signed to replace Kane should he get injured. The fact that, he hasn't had too many Premier League starts, and the fact they put Kane as Bale as a striker or Son as a striker. What are your thoughts on the fact he's been left on the bench for some games and we haven't had an out-and-out recognised striker?
That's the only thing that's making me question it, because it how many times over the years have we gone through periods where we've had used Son as a false number 9, etc., when Kane's been injured, and we've said, "What? Yeah, this is what happens when you don't have a second striker in your squad," and then we do get one, and the same thing happens. It's just very, very confusing to me. So I can't explain it, but hopefully his performance against Villa on Sunday at least justified that he is trustworthy for that role, and hopefully in the summer he does seem to be have a good relationship with most of the players, obviously especially with Lucas, that Brazilian connection that they've got. So yeah, hopefully by next season, if he does come home, more chances are going to come his way.
100% agree with that, and obviously the connection thing's a big point for a player and a club. Joe, just touching on what myself and Ben has said there, do you think, Carlos Vinicius, you don't obviously have to tell me if you think we should sign him or not, but do you think, he's an improvement to, I'm going to name you some players we've had over the last few years that might put it in perspective a bit more. So obviously you've got Roberto Soldado, Vincent Janssen, is he an improvement to that?
Rente. He's a different type of player to those guys, I think. He just looks different. He was brought in, as you said, as a backup. He was brought in to maybe add depth and play those other competitions. He's performed well when he's been given the chance. And I think Spurs fans do like him because he tries. That's the thing you always get with him. He does try. Would I say he looks like a £40 million player? No. And the thing you got to think about is, yeah, Dane Scarlett coming up, you got to trust your youth. That's always, really important. And the only way I'd see you signing him is, obviously having depth in the area. Yeah, you could sign him and you've got the obligation there. And with COVID and everything, maybe it's good to have that locked in advance, because it's going to be hard to go out and get other players. But then the other thing I could think of is, you need to sign a striker. Let's say Harry Kane does leave. But then again, with the money you get from Kane, he's not a replacement. So that kind of counteracts it. It's a tough one with him because, as I said, there's two ends of the scale. He tries. When he gets given the chances, he usually, does take them. But I just don't think he's worth 40 million. So I will answer your question of do I think Spurs should sign him? Probably not for that. I don't know. Just I like watching him, and he's he does try, and it's nice seeing the will there, and he's a passionate player. But 40 million, no, I'm sorry.
but just to be a bit, picky and cause a bit of a debate, what is it? Why are you saying he's not worth 40 million? Because to me, obviously, 40 million in this day and age in the market isn't actually a whole lot of money. So, I mean, name me some players you're going to get for less than 40 million pounds that is considerably better than Carlos Vinicius.
Yeah, true.
So
it's a tough one, just off the top of my head to even think like in the market and who would be available. My only kind of logic for it was, yeah, his positioning's decent, he does some good stuff, but I don't have that wow factor when I watch him. I'll be honest. He does a job, and I guess at the end of the day that's all you need, but I don't look at him and think, wow, this guy's different. Or I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like 40 million is an ask. I know you said in this market it's not as much as it actually seems to the everyday person it's an obscene amount of money, but in the market it's quite diluted. But I just don't get that wow factor from him. That's all. I think if he continues for the rest of the season playing well and gets a run in the team after Villa, I'm happy to be proved wrong. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying now with everything that I've seen so far, that's all. And Yeri's got 9 goals. Yeri took his chance, but a third of those were against Marine. So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize it, and I definitely think there's a debate there, 100%. Ben, was there anything else you wanted to say on Carlos Vinicius?
No, I think we've covered it all pretty much. I think the only way that maybe, I mean, you looking at around at the other Premier League, like who else would be available in the summer as a backup. I mean, if there isn't really any option available, it doesn't make any sense to either just spend money for the sake of it on trying to find another untested, unproven striker. At least with Vinicius, he's been at the club for a year. He knows everybody there, so at least he's settled. So, if there is no other option, it might just be safer to just buy, but that way you've got that safety net just in case.
And the other thing is, like, if we don't qualify for the Champions League, Europa League does probably look the more likely option. And the fact he's had a good Europa League and has been Player of the Week a couple of times, that bodes well as well, because not only is he used to the Premier League a bit when he's played, he's more used to the Europa League and the other cup competitions. So it gives us that second option as well. I think is what you're getting out of there, Ben.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Well,
so
Can I just add one thing? Sorry, you're saying about playing it safe, which is great. Obviously, if Jose is going to continue the manager, should he be in the team, or if Jose did really like him, is there stuff behind the scenes that's kind of tells why he doesn't get as much of a chance as he has been? And I don't think Jose is the type of manager that wants to play it safe. That's all I would say. I feel like there's stuff behind the scenes there.
Time will tell, and time will tell if we sign Vinicius in the summer on a permanent. Now, today, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but today some news has broken about the Gareth Bale situation and whether he's going to say Spurs past this season. Now, we've all seen it, and some of us might be surprised and some of us might not be, but apparently the plan for Gareth Bale was to do a loan year at Spurs and then go back to Real Madrid. Now, obviously, he's basically said what was in the contract. Now, from what people are saying, he's basically hinting at the fact he's not going to be at Tottenham for another year. Ben, what are your opinions on that? Do you think Gareth Bale should stay if Levy can push it, or do you think, thanks for the memories, time to go?
I'm very conflicted on it. I mean, just thinking back to the fanfare when he was brought back, last summer, the amount of happiness that there was around this, and then, we've waited and waited and waited for like 6 months for him to finally, because he's just finally in the last couple of weeks, he seems to finally get his, the touch of the football, showing the quality we all know he's always had, and then. I don't know, maybe we did need that time to get back, but it just feels like he's basically used it as an extended holiday, and I just think a lot of Spurs fans will feel that they've been, sort of misled, thinking that it was this triumphant return, and then, he's actually just said, oh yeah, I've got to go now, bye. So,
yeah, true.
I do. If Levy can force it through, I'm sure that he can. But if it's going to do more harm than good, then I think it might just be better for him to go back.
100%, and there could be a lot of unnecessary debt there. Obviously, his wages we know are ridiculous. Money a week, and the fact that it could accrue more debt for the club, and I say debt for the club, I mean wages and outgoings. Is obviously probably a concern, and and like you said about the year holiday, I'm sure he was probably open to play on some of the English golf courses, but that hasn't quite come off for him, unfortunately. But we'll certainly see what happens on that. And obviously, Joe, I'll go to you. what are your thoughts on Gareth Bale continuing?
There's layers to it. That's all I'm going to say. So when he did leave way back, there's no disrespect to Tottenham. He made that significant jump to the next level. Real Madrid, he won Champions Leagues, La Ligas. He's been incredible. Obviously, the fairy tale kind of has come to an end of him with Zidane, and they've had the very public fallout. He's holding up the flag saying, was it Wales, Golf Madrid in that order and stuff, taking digs. He's obviously been unsettled there and has fallen out of the first team. But with that wage he's getting, he's not going to leave just by being left out of the team, because he's quite happy to cash in. So there's that. Tottenham as a club, since he's left, have certainly leveled up, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of just stature of the club, and where they stand and where they rank in the eyes of the footballing world. In terms of actual performance and trophies, nothing's changed, which is a shame. It should have done, but it hasn't. And he's come back on a year loan. I think it just depends on how you view it, really. From his personal perspective, he wants to play for Wales in the summer at the Euros. So coming back to a team he does love, a team that he knows about, and getting back to his full fitness, playing football. There's one thing getting back to full fitness, but also enjoying your football ahead of a big tournament. He wants to be back in his best frame of mind, in his best physical shape, ahead of something he obviously cares about. He's such a patriot of Wales. So I don't know. I just find it. I'm not shocked by it at all. I wasn't expecting him to stay past the summer. I thought it was a 1 year thing. He'd get back to playing and then go from there, even if he does leave and go somewhere else. I think it was a nice thing for the fans. It was a nice thing for him. But the timing of the announcement is weird. Obviously, they've just crashed out of the Europa League. I just find it weird to drop it now. I don't know if it's an agent thing. Agents do this quite a lot to create talk and, try and raise the stock of their clients and stuff. But it just feels like a weird time to announce it, especially when the thing that Spurs fans would be upset about is they've been so patient with him. And now he's started to finally produce and everyone's loving it. Everyone's getting excited. And it feels like there's been a very short window of that. The team as a whole have had a poor performance, and then this has been released, and suddenly it's just, and their romanticism has gone. Spurs fans, as much as no one's going to be too disappointed or too surprised by it, it's still not going to stop you from feeling annoyed, upset, angry. It's a weird situation. There's a lot of layers to it. That's what I'm going to say.
We'll definitely agree with all the points there, and the fact that there's probably more to it, and the unexpected announcement of it. 9 games before the end of the Premier League season, a couple of weeks before the big final. It seems like if you're going to say that, just say it at the end, because we're near the end of this. We're near the end of the season anyway, and like you said, I think it probably is to do with the agent mind games and maybe getting whether it's a signing on fee, not signing on fee, another year at Spurs and more potential money, or whether it means, he gets more money at Real Madrid. We probably will never know the ins and outs of the financials there, but we can probably have a good guess at Real Madrid have more money to spend than Tottenham for sure. And, it is definitely a concern coming out of this time, especially for just morale as well, in the unsettled camp that we know it as it is anyway. So anyway, very, very good points all round. We're going to go into the final section now, which is going to be the Q&A. Now, on the Spurs related story today, we put out a question saying, send in your questions for Ben and ourselves. And we've got a few good ones here as I'm looking. Ben, I'm going to start with you on a couple of questions. Are you ready to be quizzed on Tottenham? Anything Tottenham?
Fire away.
Okay, we'll start with an easy one. Okay. Billy Bailey asks, who is your favourite Spurs player and why?
And of current squad, for me, it's got to be Harry Kane. It's just, it's just, what can you say? Everything, just everything about him it just makes you proud of us to be a Spurs fan. Growing up, though, actually, for me, my Spurs hero was actually David Ginola. He was the first footballer who made me love football as a kid. Mm-hmm. The way he galloped on the wings with his long hair, just looking along, just thinking, oh God, I wish that looks cool. So, yeah, as a kid, that's kind of what really drew me in. But, yeah, but in today, yeah, it's Kane head and shoulders.
Interesting stuff, and Kane is obviously a very popular option as well. I'm not going to ask Joe this one because he probably doesn't have a favourite Spurs player. Actually, not being a Spurs fan, but I'm sure Joe has some admirers of Spurs and certain players he doesn't like. For me, growing up, it was the man behind me. You can't quite see, but it was Jermaine Defoe. I just loved his, tenacity and his in front of goal. He was honestly one of a kind, and I think he's honestly one of the most underrated players the Premier League's seen. Now that might be a controversial comment, but the way he can hit a ball and the way, his finishing, you don't normally see as many strikers these days. Some of them have a bit of flair to them. I'm thinking the likes of Gabriel Jesus or Aguero. They're not, Jermaine Defoe was just, the classic English striker, shoot, score, not too much on the ball, bit of pace. That for me, that was what I loved. And I obviously love Heung-min Son at the moment as well, and Harry Kane. But no, it's very interesting hearing about Ginola because I wasn't quite that age to see Ginola, but I certainly know and understand why you've picked him, because seeing some of the past footage and how much of a great he was for Tottenham over that 90s period was incredible. Okay, so we'll go with another comment, and I'll go with Joe because I didn't ask him that one, and I'm sure he's probably glad I didn't ask him that one as well. So we've kind of answered this one already, Joe, but how do you feel about Bale losing? How do you feel about Bale leaving in the summer, and why do you think it would make sense either way?
How do I? It doesn't shock me. Like, the thing that shocked me about seeing it was the timing of it. I wasn't expecting him to stay. When you get a 600k guaranteed going back to Madrid for one more year, you're probably going to take it. Mm-hmm. And we know he's maybe fallen out of love with the club a little bit. He still had a great time there, so it definitely wasn't a regret going. But I could imagine him being the type that would see out his contract, leave afterwards, and go where he wanted to, rather than let the club cash in. But sorry, what was the question? My thoughts on it, and either way, like how it affects. Yeah, Spurs. I mean, if he could have stayed in that form, of course they'd want to keep him. It would be a no-brainer. He's got so much quality. He's a world-class player. One of the best players alongside Harry Kane and others during the last decade or so at the club. But going back to Real Madrid, maybe it's a way to get into that team. I know they've been playing a lot better than they were when they were going through a bit of a sticky period. But Benzema's age, and they need those assets. So I'm sure he'd like to try and revive his career at Real Madrid. Who wouldn't? It's always nice to be at the hub of kind of reviving a sleeping giant. But I don't know. I think he just wants to see out the next year of his career. If it's at Real Madrid, then so be it, and he can extend it. If that's the end of the chapter and he goes elsewhere, then he's got plenty of clubs that are going to want him. So it makes sense from Bale's point of view and Bale's perspective. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Would 100% agree there. I'm going to move on to the next question now, and this one's for. And by the way, that question was from Bradley Gregg. I wanted to give him the credit because it was a good question. But moving on to the next question, Ben. Now, this is going to be one that's going to be a very interesting hear from you because of what you said in the first question about how much you love Harry Kane. He makes you proud to be a Spurs fan. Now, this one's from Peter Mitchell, 1967. And he says, what's your opinion on Kane potentially leaving?
I tried to think of it, but at the same time, if he's ever going to go, then it will probably be this summer, because you think he'll be 28 years old this summer, so it's probably the last chance he's ever going to get at a massive move. In my opinion, there's only one club who could afford him, and I think everybody knows who that is. So I think the question is, does he stay somewhere he knows he's going to be loved and adored for the rest of his career, or is he going to want to be somewhere that guarantees him, well, pretty much would guarantee him multiple trophies for the rest of his career and however long he plays for? So I have everything crossed to me that he doesn't go, but never say never.
I mean, like you're saying there, the obvious, presuming we're on the same parallel, is Real Madrid, and obviously, like Joe said, with Karim Benzema, pushing on now, maybe we'll see Kane and Bale link up again next season, but for all the wrong reasons. We'll have to see. But obviously, Manchester City could be an option if he is going to, stab us in the back a little bit and go to a Premier League rival. But
were you talking about City or Madrid, Ben?
Yeah, actually, I do think it would be City.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I thought it would be Real Madrid
because so sorry, but you look at City. I don't think it's just, he's a very good player, but for me, he's not an out-and-out striker. I think Aguero's got maybe a year left at City. I think it kind of depends if City go try and get Haaland in the summer or not. I think that would be the only thing that maybe would. It depends if they go for him rather than Kane in the summer. But
see, that's always on my mind, the fact that Haaland's an option for Man City, and he's had roots from his father who used to play for Manchester City. As we know, he was on the receiving end of that Roy Keane tackle back in the day, which was horrendous. But I mean, for me, I thought Real Madrid would be the more suitable option. And I think he would prefer to go abroad than go to a Premier League club, another Premier League club. I really do. I think it would hurt him to go to another Premier League club. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not going to sit here and say that, but for me, I think the abroad option would be the safer one for him in terms of his respect.
I can see that, but I do. I've heard in the past that he's not very with his young family that he's got. He's apparently not comfortable moving the ball abroad. He preferred to stay in England, so that kind of is what leans me to. If he was going to move, I do think he'd stay in England. And the other thing you've got to remember, Kane, when he's at Spurs, the difference in work rate, but he's all over the pitch. He's constant this season. He's been the lead assister as well as the lead goal scorer, not just for us, but in the whole, in the Premier League this season. So, if he's at Man City, he's not going to have that pressure on him. When you've got Kevin De Bruyne, when you've got Gundogan, when you've got the embarrassment of riches of midfielders that they have, he literally doesn't have to do probably 70% less of the work and get exactly the same or even more number of goals for it as well. So
100%.
I know that's obviously not, maybe not, but look, when you're thinking it from our point of view, it's that level of supply to him. He legit could score 50 goals this season in the league. I honestly think that'd be possible in that team.
I was going to say before you said that at the end, I was going to say it's literally going to be scary if it does happen. Let's pray it doesn't. But it would be scary to see how many goals he would score for Man City because of the service he would get. And like you said, he wouldn't have to do the dropping back and creating the chances because, like you said, they got Kevin De Bruyne, they got Mahrez, they got Sterling. I could name them all, but we haven't even got time. But like you said, it is a terrifying thought, and I really hope it doesn't happen. And like you said, Ben, I'm sure you really don't hope it happens because
everything cross it doesn't.
Exactly that.
If Man City do get football's finished, there'd be no point playing Man City because it'd be a waste of time otherwise for everyone.
Oh, it would be a harsh watch, for sure. It definitely hurt. But Joe, what are your thoughts on Harry Kane potentially leaving in the summer? Obviously, you don't have the emotional side like me and Ben have, but do you have some thoughts on which club to go to and what would suit him?
I think City is the best bet. And also, Pep Guardiola has been very public in saying how much he admires Harry Kane and, how much of a great player he is. So there's obviously that affection there and he's clearly interested. I think that's been well documented that he's always interested in Harry Kane. I don't see him going to Man United at the moment. I know they're getting fed up with Martial, but I just can't see that transfer happening at the moment. And I don't think Harry Kane wants to go abroad. So the obvious and only kind of real team is Man City, I think. And it just depends what he wants. I know you're saying about maybe not the emotion. You know, I'm a Liverpool fan. We had Gerrard. I know exactly how it feels. And I thought he was going to leave to Chelsea in 2006. He didn't. That was an emotional time. And he stayed and he did win trophies. And that's the thing Kane hasn't got. He's got this amazing goal scoring record. He wants to be one of the best in the world, and he is. You know, only 27 still. But he just doesn't have the trophies to back it up with. And whenever you have that conversation about the best and, you know, throughout time, the debate always leads on to what they've won and what they've done. And I feel like he may want that. So the Carabao Cup final is a huge one because you can look at it both ways. You don't win and he leaves because he does want trophies before the end of his career. He wants to, you know, fill out his portfolio for his whole footballing life. Or you do win it, he stays because there's a project, right? But at the same time, you could win it, and that could be his goodbye. He's won a trophy with Tottenham, and then he leaves.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say that if you didn't mention the fact if he won it, then that might be, you know, curtains. I was hoping you were going to say that, but you know that is definitely an interesting point.
And I just think no Tottenham fan can be mad if he leaves. You know, he's done so much for your club. He's been your club for such a long time. So it's not, I don't think his legacy would be, obviously it'd be different if he stayed, he'd be an ultimate legend, but he'd always be talked about and loved at Spurs. That's never ever going to change. And I just think he's compared to Shearer a lot of the time. And, you know, Shearer did go back to his boyhood club, Newcastle, but he won the trophies. You know, he won the Premier League before he went back there.
Blackburn,
and Shearer's always been an outright Newcastle. You know, he bleeds, you know, black and white and stuff. There's pictures from way back of Harry Kane in an Arsenal shirt, which obviously isn't going to sit right. He's done like a Jamie Carragher. He was, you know, maybe an Arsenal fan. He's grown to love Tottenham. I don't think that's, you know, any question. Jamie Carragher was an Everton fan, grown to love Liverpool. You know, it's that kind of thing. I just think I won't, if this is the summer, if he's going to leave, and I think if he goes to City, he won't be the one carrying the team anymore. You know, he'll be in that pond with all the rest of the big fish. And the way that he drops back into midfield will be perfect for how Pep wants to play. And yeah, Haaland is maybe the more desirable one long term, but with the bank account that City have, there's no reason that they wouldn't get Kane and then a few years later get Haaland anyway.
I think that's very interesting, and I think it's probably opened my mind to the Man City move maybe making more sense to him. And just quickly going on what you said there, like obviously the Shearer comparison now, if he wants to break the Premier League scoring record, he can't do that in sunny Spain. So it could be an interesting one for his mentality and breaking records. And, you know, like you said, sometimes it is the team records they compare, and sometimes like the silverware, and sometimes it is the individual records. And both of them will be on his mind, I think. And I think if he wants to break Jimmy Greaves' record and be the Tottenham all-time scorer, he's going to want to stay at Tottenham. If he's more worried about his silverware mixed with the individual record of Premier League, Man City. If he doesn't bother about, you know, the individual records, and he wants a nice lifestyle with his family and a nice hot climate, he's probably going to go to Madrid. So I think it's a complete disarray in terms of being certain where he's going.
He's done himself a good service because he can choose what he wants and not really, you know, muck up what he's already done. That's there and that's preserved and that's going to be respected now. It's not like, you know, he's got to the top of his game quickly and he's going to cash in and go and then jeopardize everything like a lot of players have done. He's put in the graft and he deserves everything he gets. And I don't think,
100%.
you know, as much as Spurs fans could wave goodbye to him with a tear in their eye, they'll want him to do well still.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think Ben would agree with me. I'm going to switch to Ben. The fact that, you know, he is a legend in my eyes. He's going to be a legend no matter what. But obviously, Ben, it would hurt for him to go. But would you say he's still a Spurs legend if he goes now?
100%.
Yeah.
And there is no Spurs fan who should begrudge him if he does choose to go, because he literally has left everything, you know, regardless of what he's supported as a kid. He is one of us. You know, that's the thing everyone loves about Kane. He feels like one of us playing out there. That's the reason everybody has loved him so much. And yeah, obviously it would hurt if he goes, but again, you can't. It would be with the fondest wishes of success.
With fondest wishes and success and fondest memories as well for me. Definitely. Like, I would never forget what he did for the club, and pushed us on to being a top 4 consistent team bar the last year or so. But no, it's been fantastic to see, and I wouldn't personally hold a personal grudge if it happens. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, then like I said, I wouldn't be too angry about it. I'd actually want him to do really well, and obviously I still want us to beat Man City, obviously, but I would still want him to do well for himself. So I think that's the summary of all of our points there. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you very, very much, Ben, for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I think there's been some really, really interesting discussions today.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks very much for inviting me on, guys. It's been absolute ball.
No worries at all, and I'm sure we'll see you on future weeks of the Spurs-related YouTube now. Seems weird saying that. I'm sure you might be listening on Spotify anyway, but you can catch us over on our new YouTube channel on Spurs-related on YouTube. Links will be in all the descriptions for the promos. And of course, the main thing is definitely go and follow BenSpurs21 on YouTube. He's pushing for the heights of YouTube. We've already seen his success over there already. And obviously go and follow him on all his social medias as well. Joe, thank you very much for also joining us as normal as my co-host. And it's obviously same time again next week. Not countdown. No, we're still sticking with Spurs-related YouTube. But no, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure as always. I'll see you next week.
Same time next week. Ben, we will be keeping tabs with the YouTube channel. Like I said, go and check him out, guys. You have been watching and listening to the Spurs-related podcast. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you again next week. Goodbye.